There's something quietly devastating that happens in human interaction, a kind of silent sabotage that most people never become aware of. Someone enters your life, you feel drawn to them. There's interest, attraction, something worth pursuing. And yet, somewhere between that initial spark and where things could go, something shifts. They pull back, the energy changes, and eventually, they're gone, convinced somehow that you were never really interested in the first place. The strange part is this: you were interested, deeply sometimes, but something in your behavior told a completely different story. This isn't about playing games or sending mixed signals on purpose. It's about the quiet, almost invisible ways that people communicate disinterest without meaning to. It's about the gap between what someone feels inside and what actually comes across. And that gap, when you don't know it exists, can cost you connections you genuinely wanted. What we're going to explore here is how this happens, not as a list of tips to memorize, but as a deeper understanding of human perception. Because once you understand how people read signals and how easily those signals can be misread, you'll start to notice patterns in your own life that suddenly make a lot more sense. Let's start with something fundamental: the nature of attention. When someone is genuinely interested in another person, attention behaves in a particular way. It gravitates, it lingers, it returns, even when there are distractions. This isn't a conscious decision. It's something that happens naturally when someone captivates us. We look at them a little longer. We notice when they leave the room. We find ourselves tracking their movements, their expressions, their words, not in a calculated way, but in a way that simply reflects where our interest lies. Now here's the problem. Some people suppress this entirely, not because they lack interest, but because of something deeper. Maybe they were taught that showing interest is vulnerability. Maybe they learned early on that wanting something openly was a way to get hurt. Or maybe they simply don't realize that their natural resting state reads as indifferent. Whatever the source, the result is the same. Their attention doesn't visibly gravitate. It stays neutral, distributed, careful. And to the person they're interested in, this neutrality feels like disinterest. Think about what it's like to be on the receiving end of this. You're with someone, trying to gauge if there's mutual attraction. You look for signs, and what you find is nothing. Not coldness exactly, but nothing that suggests you're different from anyone else in the room. Most people, when they encounter this, don't think, maybe they're just guarded. They think, they're not interested, and they act accordingly, by pulling back themselves. This is how connections die before they ever really begin, not from rejection, but from misperception. There's a related dynamic worth examining: the difference between engagement and presence. Being present means being physically there, but engagement is something else. Engagement means actively participating in the unfolding moment between two people. Some people master the art of being present without being engaged. They show up. They respond when spoken to. They maintain polite conversation. But there's a quality of passivity to it, a sense that they're allowing the interaction to happen rather than participating in it. This often stems from fear of coming on too strong, fear of seeming eager, fear of misreading the situation and embarrassing themselves. And so they hold back, waiting for clearer signals before they commit their energy. But here's what they don't realize. Their hesitation is itself a signal, and that signal says, "I'm not sure about you." The cruel irony is that many of these people are waiting for the other person to show interest first. They want permission to engage, but the other person is often doing the exact same thing, waiting for signals that never come because everyone is playing it safe. This creates a strange standoff where two interested people slowly convince each other that neither one cares. Breaking this pattern requires understanding that engagement isn't something you offer after you feel safe. It's something you offer as an invitation. It's the thing that creates safety for both people. Now let's talk about something subtler: the rhythm of responsiveness. Human beings are exquisitely sensitive to timing, not just what someone says or does, but when they say or do it. When interest is present, responsiveness tends to be immediate or near immediate, not desperate, not frantic, but prompt. There's a natural eagerness that shows up in how quickly someone returns a message, how readily they pick up a conversational thread, how little delay there is between stimulus and response. When this responsiveness is absent, when there are long gaps, slow replies, days between messages, it communicates something very specific. You are not a priority. Now, this isn't always true. Some people are genuinely busy. Some people have anxious attachment styles that make them delay responses to avoid seeming too eager. Some people simply lose track of time or get overwhelmed by communication. But none of that matters from the other person's perspective. All they see is the pattern, and the pattern tells a story. The story goes like this: if they were really interested, they would respond faster. The delay means I'm not important enough to prioritize. This might seem unfair, And in some ways, it is. But human beings aren't logic machines. They're pattern recognition systems. And the pattern of slow responsiveness, regardless of the reason behind it, registers as low interest. What makes this particularly insidious is that many people who do this are trying to protect themselves. They think that responding too quickly will make them seem desperate or available. They've internalized advice about playing it cool, about not being too eager, about maintaining mystery. But the cost of this strategy is that it works too well. The mystery they create isn't intriguing. It's off-putting. The coolness they project isn't attractive. It's cold. There's another dimension to this that deserves attention: the quality of questions asked. Interest expresses itself through curiosity. When someone genuinely wants to know another person, they ask questions. Not surface questions, real ones. Questions that show they've been listening. Questions that probe deeper than polite conversation requires. The absence of this kind of questioning is one of the clearest signals of disinterest. If someone rarely asks about your life, your thoughts, your experiences, if conversations feel like they're always flowing in one direction, the message is clear. You're not interesting enough to be curious about. Again, the irony is that many people fail to ask questions not because they don't care, but because they're too focused on making a good impression. They're so worried about saying the right things, presenting themselves well, and avoiding awkwardness that they forget to actually show interest in the other person. The result is a conversation that feels oddly one-sided, not because they're self-absorbed, but because their anxiety has hijacked their attention. From the outside, though, self-absorption is exactly what it looks like, and self-absorption is the opposite of interest. The fix isn't complicated, but it does require a shift in focus. Instead of thinking, "How am I coming across?" the anxious person's default question, the reframe is, "What am I genuinely curious about in this person?" That simple shift moves attention outward, and outward attention is what interest actually looks like in practice. Let's examine something more physical: the body's role in communicating interest. Human beings have spent most of their evolutionary history in environments where verbal language didn't exist. Long before words, there were bodies, turning toward or away, opening up or closing off, leaning in or pulling back. This ancient language still operates constantly beneath the surface of our conversations, and it's remarkably honest. Bodies don't lie the way words can. When interest is present, the body shows it. Orientation shifts toward the other person. Physical distance decreases naturally. Posture opens. Facial expressions become more animated. There's a quality of leaning in, literally and figuratively, that can't be faked. When interest is absent, the body shows that too. Orientation stays neutral or averted. Distance is maintained or increased. Posture closes. Expressions flatten. The problem is that many people control their bodies too tightly. Whether from nervousness, self-consciousness, or learned habits of restraint, they keep their physical expression locked down. They don't lean in. They don't orient fully. They maintain what might be called a safe posture, one that can't be read as too eager. But this safety is the enemy of connection, because when the body stays guarded, the other person's body responds in kind. We mirror each other unconsciously. Guardedness breeds guardedness. Distance creates distance. This doesn't mean performing physical interest that isn't real. That would be manipulation, and it would feel wrong to both people. What it means is allowing the body to express what's actually there, stopping the automatic suppression that many people have learned to do without realizing it. Here's something that often goes unexamined: the role of future orientation in signaling interest. When someone is interested, they naturally think ahead. They mention things they'd like to do. They reference future moments. They plant seeds for continued connection. There's this restaurant I've been wanting to try. Have you seen that exhibit at the museum? I heard that film is incredible. These aren't casual observations. They're invitations disguised as statements. They're ways of saying, "I want to see you again," without the vulnerability of saying it directly. The absence of this future talk sends the opposite message. When someone never mentions doing anything else together, never plants those seeds, never gestures toward continued connection, it communicates that this interaction exists in isolation, that there's no imagined future to step into. Many people avoid future talk because it feels presumptuous. They don't want to assume the other person wants to see them again. They don't want to put pressure on the situation, so they keep everything in the present tense, inadvertently suggesting that the present is all there is. But human connection runs on hope, on the imagination of what could be. Without that forward-looking energy, interactions feel like they're going nowhere, because they literally aren't pointing toward anything. There's another pattern worth exploring: how people handle attention from others. When someone is interested in you, they tend to be receptive to positive attention. Compliments land well. Appreciation is absorbed. Warmth is returned. When someone isn't interested, or is communicating disinterest, they deflect. They dismiss compliments. They create distance when appreciation is offered. They fail to return warmth. The problem is that deflection can become a habit. Some people deflect because of low self-worth. They genuinely don't believe the positive things being said about them. Others deflect because of self-consciousness. They feel awkward receiving attention. Others deflect because they think it's humble or modest. But from the other person's perspective, deflection feels like rejection. Offering appreciation is an act of vulnerability. When that offering is deflected, the message received is, "I don't want what you're giving." This creates a discouraging loop. The interested person offers warmth, the deflecting person pushes it away, and the interested person eventually stops offering. What's required here isn't false modesty or overblown gratitude. It's simple receptivity, the willingness to let positive attention land, to acknowledge it, to let the other person see that their appreciation was received. Let's address something that operates in the background of many of these dynamics: the role of anxiety. Anxiety doesn't feel like disinterest from the inside. Quite the opposite. It often comes from caring too much, wanting too much, fearing too much. But anxiety expresses itself in ways that look a lot like disinterest from the outside. The over-controlled body, the delayed responses, the failure to ask questions, the deflection of warmth, the absence of future talk, the neutral attention that doesn't visibly gravitate. All of these can be anxiety in disguise. The person isn't disinterested. They're overwhelmed. They're not withholding engagement. They're paralyzed by the stakes. They're not failing to lean in. They're terrified of what leaning in might mean. But none of that translates. None of it reads accurately, because other people can only see behavior, not the feelings behind it. This is perhaps the most important insight in all of this. The gap between internal experience and external expression is where connections die. Not because people don't care, but because caring doesn't automatically translate into behavior that shows it. Closing this gap isn't about performing interest you don't feel. It's about recognizing when the interest you do feel isn't making it to the surface, and learning to let it through. There's a deeper question underneath all of this. Why is expressing interest so difficult for some people? Part of the answer is cultural. Many people absorb messages early in life about the dangers of wanting openly. They learn that desire makes you vulnerable, that showing interest gives the other person power, that the one who cares less has the upper hand. These lessons aren't entirely wrong. There is vulnerability in wanting. There is an asymmetry when one person cares more than the other. But the conclusion many people draw, that the solution is to hide their interest, creates exactly the problem they're trying to avoid. By withholding expression, they don't protect themselves. They sabotage themselves. They lose connections not to rejection, but to misunderstanding. The alternative isn't reckless disclosure. It isn't laying all your cards on the table immediately. It's something more calibrated, allowing genuine interest to show in proportion to the situation, not performing more than you feel, but also not suppressing what's actually there. This requires a certain courage, the willingness to be seen wanting something, the acceptance that visibility creates vulnerability, and the understanding that connection cannot happen without that vulnerability. What does this look like in practice? It looks like attention that doesn't hide, that allows itself to settle on the person you're drawn to, that doesn't pretend to be evenly distributed when it isn't. It looks like engagement that participates rather than waits, that contributes energy rather than conserving it, that treats interaction as collaboration rather than performance. It looks like responsiveness that reflects actual priority, not manufactured urgency, but honest eagerness, the willingness to reply when you want to reply, without the strategic delay. It looks like questions that arise from genuine curiosity, that show you've been listening, that demonstrate you want to know more than surface details. It looks like a body that allows itself to express, that orients toward, that opens rather than guards, that lets the physical language of interest speak. It looks like future orientation, seeds planted, possibilities suggested, the gentle communication that you want more of this. It looks like receptivity to warmth, the willingness to let appreciation land, to absorb it rather than deflect it, to return what's offered. None of this is performance. All of it is permission. Permission to let what you actually feel become visible. Here's the deeper truth underneath all of this. People don't just want to be liked. They want to feel liked. They want evidence. They want to see it in behavior, in attention, in the 1,000 small signals that accumulate into certainty. When those signals are absent, even when the feelings are present, the absence is what registers. And absence, interpreted, becomes rejection. The goal isn't to broadcast interest indiscriminately. It's not to become an open book with everyone. It's simply to recognize when suppression has become a habit, when the protective mechanisms designed to keep you safe have started keeping you isolated instead. Connection requires visibility, and visibility requires allowing yourself to be seen, not performing, but simply showing up as interested when you are, as engaged when you are, as oriented toward when you are. The people who struggle with this aren't broken. They're often just protected, sometimes more protected than they realize. And the path forward isn't about adding something new. It's about removing the barrier that's been blocking something that was always there. There's a particular quality that emerges when someone stops hiding their interest. It's not aggression. It's not desperation. It's something closer to warmth made visible. It's the experience of being around someone and feeling like you matter to them, like they're actually glad you're there, like their attention is a gift they're offering rather than a resource they're hoarding. This quality can't be faked for long, but it also can't emerge when someone is constantly suppressing what they feel. What's required is trust. Trust that it's okay to want. Trust that visibility won't destroy you. Trust that the right people will respond to genuine interest with interest of their own. This trust isn't built through reassurance. It's built through experience, through allowing yourself to be seen and discovering that the world doesn't end. That vulnerability, while uncomfortable, is survivable. That the connections made possible by visibility are worth the exposure. Recognizing these patterns doesn't mean forcing anything. It simply means understanding when something you're doing, without realizing it, is telling a story you never meant to tell. Because the signals we send rarely stay neutral. They either invite connection or quietly close the door on it. And most of the time, the person on the other side has no way of knowing which one you actually intended. Once you start seeing how your own behavior might be misread, the next thing that often becomes clear is that other people are doing the exact same thing. From a man's perspective, this can feel like mixed signals that don't make sense. Someone who seems interested one moment, then pulls back the next. The next video explains why this happens so often, why attraction can retreat even when interest is real, and what's actually going on underneath when someone is scared of falling too fast.